Hello and welcome to your midweek feast of the Scotland Rugby News podcast. And I'm going to start with a quick word from our sponsor. The Scotland Rugby News podcast is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV tonight. There are thousands of jobs in there across Scotland. You'll find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. I'm your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped, and I am joined by my partner in crime, the one and the only Gavin Harper. Hello, sir. Let's get straight into business. How's things?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you? And how was your weekend in Brighton?
It was incredible. Do you know the whole thing? I saw a stat on social media today about 7.1 million have watched the games and got involved, and there's so many positive stories. American player with colostomy bag, the neurodiverse players in the England squad. There are just so many nice things going and people willing to get involved and see the goodness in it. I think it's been incredible. So being there live was impressive. The flipping Mexican wave nearly surfaced again, but there were enough people grumpy like me that put a halt to it. So, listen, it was class, and I think we're probably done with the group stages, aren't we? Because it's been not one-sided, because there was some more competitive games at the weekend, but I think we now want to see, right, go for it. And some of these quarter-final ties are tasty.
Yeah, they are. I think the first thing to say is, and we've talked about this before, the Men's World Cup is still guilty of having one-sided ties. You know, I'm thinking France, South Africa, you know, there was some big scores in France a couple of years ago. New Zealand and men's professional rugby is obviously a lot further down the road than the women's game is. So I think there's a degree of inevitability about these one-sided games.
No, of course there is.
Well,
listen, I remember the World Cup in '95 when the All Blacks beat Japan 147-5 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and you know, and Scotland beat Ivory Coast by 90 points. You know, it's not that long ago that there were ridiculous results. I think there might still be a couple of them.
Yeah,
we might still have to get our head around the fact that there's going to be big scores in these, because the reality is the top, as we've said before, the top two, the top three are way in front of the rest. But look, the top 8 teams are now in the quarterfinals, and like from a Scottish point of view, we've said this before, but there's probably no bigger challenge in sport than playing England women in terms of the standard that we've set. You know, I mean, they are miles in front.
It's the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls. It's that ridiculous. But I bumped into Gareth Steenson on Sunday morning on the beach in Brighton. He was having a wander, and he's coaching with the Irish women. And it was nice chatting to him. He obviously realised it was going to be a fair old task against the Black Ferns, but he was quite confident, and it kind of rubbed off on me. And then obviously 40 points to Donut, but it'll be interesting them against France. I'm a little bit sad that we've got 2 quarterfinal Six Nations ties, that we've not got France against somebody from the Southern Hemisphere, or England against. Well, it wasn't going to be them against Canada, but you get what I mean. I'm a little bit sad at that, but it is what it is. Both teams have got a pretty sizable task. I think France, the seeded teams are obviously the favourites, but everybody's full of hope and optimism, because that's just been the feeling of the whole tournament.
Yeah, and I hope from a Scottish point of view, I hope that hasn't been dampened any. It doesn't feel like it has, but emotionally and physically, they'll have put so much into that Canada game. And actually, Brian Easton said after the game, he felt that the final score wasn't a true reflection. I probably agree with that, and I actually felt like in some aspects it was the poorest Scotland had played. I thought the kicking out of hand was not good. Some of the decision making was poor. They should have scored a try. Chloe Rowley had a 2-on-1 to give Rona a walk in,
there was a couple of other situations in other games where the fullback did take and give and the try was scored, and those are those kind of finer margins of the top and then the rest. I'm not quite sure. I get what you mean. Some of the things without any pressure, like the kickoff, not like coming back to a scrum and conceding a try straight away. That's a real sore one. But you're playing against the second best team in the world. They're putting you under pressure, so it is going to be harder. I was really proud of it. There was a couple of refereeing decisions where I thought, I'm not sure we've got the rub of that. But that's how it goes. And when you're playing against the good teams that put you under pressure, then you've got to take that. I think you and I spoke probably off camera last week about me and you, needed to feel like they didn't lose the momentum, and I don't think they have. The injuries are obviously sad, because to take on England, and I know Kildun and Botterman are, and they're still probably trying to find out what their team is. We needed to be at full strength.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And I think
everybody has to play 9 and 10 out of 10 to beat England.
Yeah, I think that was my point about the Canada game, is that to beat either of the top 2-3 teams in the world, Scotland, for all that they've made great strides, Scotland need to be 10 out of 10, and they need the other team to be off it. I think, and in the Wales game, for example, I thought they were very, very, very sharp.
Yeah,
I think those wee moments like that Chloe Rowley pass, or the restart straight into touch, Evie Gallagher's yellow card, those were the little things that went against them. The worry, I think it was the France game in the Six Nations. They maybe conceded a try, and then all of a sudden they conceded another try straight away, and the game totally got away from them. That was a bit the worry for me, that they sort of hadn't sorted that out. And look, against England, I think you sort of have to accept at some point, like, England are going to score points. The challenge then is, how do you mitigate that, and how do you make sure that it's not one try followed very quickly by a second or third? All in the games back with some comments. McGee, Gallagher, Lloyd, and Orr have been. I mean, I think that's right. Like, look, I think the first two, if folk weren't 100% sure before this tournament how good they could be, like, or how good they are, I think could be's wrong. How good they are, like, they've definitely proved that. Rona, I think, had a great tournament, and Emma Orr, I think Emma Orr's been a bit quieter from an individual point of view, but she's just always at that sort of 7.5 out of 10, all, like, every time.
I think Evie Gallagher is outstanding, and her work ethic is incredible. I think she's up there with any other number 8 in the tournament. Alex Matthews is pretty special. The Aussie skippers, there are very good, but I think Evie is very, very good. Fran is doing what Fran does and scoring tries. She's electric, but she's so powerful, and she's still learning the game. She's still a pup in the game. Rona, I agree, disappointed with her first up tackle, but other than that, I mean, she just loves it, and I think she's much busier, and I think they all are, and that's what I would say about Emma. Emma isn't necessarily having the get your bum off the seat moments that we've been used to seeing when she was quite raw and just pulled them out the bag.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But she's covered a couple of breakdowns where it needed a bigger farmer to cover the breakdown because there was more of them than there was of her. So, I think there's been others, quietly going about their business. I think Sarah Bonner will be a bit disappointed with it, sort of coming round the side of the breakdown and conceding that try there, and those are those little moments. But you mentioned about being tired there. That team has played Wales, Fiji, Canada. Wales, obviously, everything went into it, kitchen sink, physical. Fiji was crazy and difficult playing conditions, so draining. You then go in against the second best team in the world, and now you've got to go and play against the best team in the world. Like, how much does that draw suck? You get the second seed in the world in your group, and then you've got to go and play the best in the world in the quarters. Like, So, and Brian's going to pick of that 23. He's probably going to have 21 going again.
Yeah, I mean, because and I think we've talked. We talked loads about that Fiji game, and do you make changes and do you not make changes? And but the reality is, momentum is so important, and we maybe don't. Maybe we've overstated that you've got that strength and depth that you can make 5 or 6 changes. But the reality is, a lot of these players, if you look at the team, Lana had an injury. Emma Wassall had spent a long time out. Sarah Bonner almost didn't make it.
Ellis Martin almost didn't make it.
So up front, there were a lot of, and probably these players have needed, particularly the 2 second rows, like they've needed games to get up to speed. And I think that probably reflects a bit of the bench. But the short answer is he's going to have to, the tight heads is the one that there'll be 2 changes. But other than that, you expect it to be the same team again.
Yeah, just before we go on to CB coming back in and what's happening at tight head, and I'll let you take over there because let's face it, he'd do and push and hope for the best in my opinion. But I was speaking to somebody close to the England camp in Brighton, and it was interesting how John Mitchell, this was how it was described to me, he has his plan for the World Cup because he's not picked anywhere close to the same 15s in the 3 games. They're then going now. I don't think they are in any way really weakened by that because they're so strong. But they're going to be a new team again this week, and they've not particularly started well. If Scotland can get a try first, then it's a nice thing. I still think England are too strong. I'm not getting too carried away with myself here, but I really want it to be that horrible thing that we're so used to of a glorious defeat. Like I want them to feel like we were close, we were in it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think the worst thing that could happen now from a Scotland point of view is you're front and centre on the biggest stage of the biggest World Cup there's been in women's rugby, and you fall flat and you lose by 50 points.
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
Now, that has been the result. There have been some big margins. I would hate to see that happen here. I think, you're right. If Scotland can score first, or Scotland can just cause a bit of chaos, if Scotland can be what you've just described Fiji as, then you never know. I would far rather they went out and gave it a proper crack than said, well, do you know what?
Yeah, they're going to do that. There's no doubt they're going to do that.
But I think the interesting thing is where expectation or the sort of idea of success lies. Look, we all want Scotland to win, but I think, let's be realistic, that's probably not going to be the outcome.
I think it has to be the closest result for the last number of years. That's the bit in the World Cup now. There has been in the real out there games. So Brazil thought they got an interception, knock on, pull it back, felt absolutely gutted because they thought they'd scored a try, and then Italy pick the pocket, get an interception, and they go and score. So but there's not been, like, we've not had a Rona or an Emma or just run through everybody and score a really cheap try, and we're not going to get that against England. England haven't really had any really cheap tries, but what they have done is they've been ruthless. So Aussie turn the ball over inside the England 22, and they run and score up the other end. Now it wasn't a silly thing. A couple of passes, Breach and Kildun playing together up the touchline, and they scored it. So Scotland, those are gutting moments where you're putting them under, and then they score a cheap one off turnovers.
Yeah.
there's very little you can do other than just looking after the ball and, you know, being pretty precise. I just hope we're able to, when we get pressure and when we do have our shot, we get over the line and we score some tries. And it's, I don't care who it is. If we could get 2-3 tries against England and keep them under 30, that would be a massive, massive success. If we, I'm interested to what England, like, I wonder what their target is. Like, they want to send a statement now. It's business end.
They do, and I think it's interesting you talked about John Mitchell's plan, because it's almost that idea of using the pool stages as like the same way that the Lions use midweek games or the warm-up games before the test matches to find combinations and to make sure everybody's had a go. And, like, you know, the reality is most teams in the world don't have that luxury. So I'm interested to see, number one, the selection, two, what the combinations are like. Is there an eye on possibly a semi-final? And what you're right, what they think is success. You know, Razzie, I think, was pretty open in France 2 years ago that if South Africa won by a point, which they did in every game, who cares? I don't think that's necessarily the same for this England team. I think there is more expectation on their shoulders.
I bumped into Helena Rowland. On Saturday morning, and she said, I think she's got 7 of the 10 possible backs numbers. So she's been capped in pretty much everything apart from scrum half, I think maybe one of the subs numbers, and 11 or something, I think it was. Yeah. Which, and she's class. I mean, Helena Rowland is almost to the point where it's her own fault that she's not just stuck on. A couple of people I spoke to reckon Zoe Harrison is the stick on 10 rather than Holly, which made me a bit sad. But then you've got Holly to come on and change things. Scrum half, Mo Hunt's your first choice there, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, all in the game. Do not wind me up by using naturally. See that naturally word? That winds me up. That's another point that we'll get to another day. But you've then got, obviously, Kildun's out. So you would imagine Rowland goes to 15. Breach and Dow are your first choice on the ding-a-ling, but it'll be interesting to see if they play Claudia McDonald-Maloney. You've then centres are interesting because Emily Scarrett, it feels a bit like she's getting to just be part of the parade. I'm not sure she's actually, but then you go and throw her in against Scotland and she doesn't get to play in the semi-final or final. I don't know. I've no idea. The depth is scary, the depth up front, because I think Zoe Aldcroft might be back. Do you stick your captain straight in, or do you save her for the semi-final? Alex Matthews was incredible. Like, it's frightening when you look at the depth there.
Yeah, like, and that's where they're at, isn't it? That's the challenge. They've got so much depth. They've got so, like, and their first choice are so good. You know, if you were picking a Lions team for 2 years' time, that's it.
Marley Packer didn't play at the weekend.
Yeah, you know, like,
so he's got to come back in. Zoe Aldcroft comes back in. So you've got the best player in the world and Marley Packer, who's potentially the best player in the world. It's.
And they wouldn't. It's not unfair. Like, they would walk into Scotland's team, but they would walk into. I think they would walk into any other team.
Yeah,
like, it's frightening, the level of, and I think that's where I would temper expectations. That, you know, I think
they're seeded number 1 in the world at, what is it, 99?
It's like 98 point. I mean, like, I don't know what World Rugby are going to do if they win it. But, like, for me, if Scotland can keep it to within the same scoreline as the Canada game and stop England, and I mean this, and stop England hitting 40 or 50 points, and, as you say, score a couple of tries, I think you go, do you know what? Yeah, fair enough. We've said before, you know, you and I have talked for weeks about get out the group, and it becomes a success. Anything after that, we knew this was the draw, so who cares?
Yeah, like, I I hope Scotland tunes in, and I hope that they tune in, because it's very easy to dismiss things. It's very, without any knowledge, it's very easy to say, it's like Scottish football. Oh, it's this and it's that. Yeah, and that, and to a certain extent it's true, but there's a lot of Scottish football can be really good. There's a lot of sport. Just because you don't know what it is, that doesn't mean it's not good. So I hope Scotland tunes in. I hope that it's a chance to really properly showcase an incredible product and give Brian what I think he deserves. That's a big send-off for. He's been through a lot, and to get that squad to the place it is, and not quite Jurgen Klopp, but it's reasonably future-proofed. I don't think we're going to, in 2 weeks' time, hear of 8 of the players hanging up their shirts. I think all of them are going to continue. I can't really see that anybody's finished. And to be the coach coming in, and I don't know what's happening with the contracts, and I genuinely don't. But that would be an attractive proposition to take on that squad.
I think, I think it probably would have been at the end of the Six Nations. My worry is that trying to attract a coach who now knows that you're maybe not being backed by the union in the way that
totally.
This time last year, and there's uncertainty. It might be, it's almost certainly going to be an entirely new coaching staff. I think Tyrone Holmes has spoken about, considering his options and not really sure whether the top job's for him. So if it's not Tyrone, you'd imagine that's the natural time to say, look, let's move the defence coach on. Ross Miller and Steve Shingler are both interim coaches, so you're now looking at bringing in a whole team of staff,
which is going to happen.
Which is going to happen, and then is that, are you going to get the funding and the backing to do that, or are you going to be told by Murrayfield, well, actually, we want you to have this person, and your input into it is very limited. So I think from a playing point of view, there are green shoots there that people say, a coach would say, yeah, do you know what? Like, I can work with that. I think all the other stuff has maybe clouded how the sort of prospect a wee bit.
Yeah. And I remember speaking to Yogi Hughes a few years ago when he was out of work and looking for a manager's job. And I get what you mean, and there is that, and I think we're probably still a little bit behind in rugby where we still think things have to be right. But as a professional coach, and there aren't that many professional coaching jobs, you're probably going to put up with whatever that situation is to coach an international women's team. So I totally appreciate what you're saying. I don't disagree. But I think there are enough coaches swimming around looking for a gig that it will still be an attractive proposition, knowing that you're probably aiming to be the third best team in the Six Nations for the foreseeable. Now, Ireland are going to stamp their feet and put up a fight. Obviously, Wales have got a way to come back. Italy are getting better. So it's not a given, but then it would be rubbish if it was a given. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. I hope it goes well. I hope they prepare well. They're enjoying being in camp. I think some of them are going to need, I don't know how they're going to cope without each other if and when their World Cup's finished and they've got to go back to Civvy Street. They're having so much fun together in camp. And that's, I posted, did I post it? I don't know if I did post it. I thought about posting it. But those 8 teams that are now leaving, I would have loved them to come up the road, stayed in Edinburgh, and we played a bowl competition so that those teams got more time in camp, because that Brazil team and Samoa team and Fiji team are now going to go back and probably disperse, and it will be difficult to come together in the way they have for the last 5 or 6 weeks. If they could have come up the road and spent another 3 weeks, kind of like the under-20s trophy did.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to play this number of games in one day, and then you're going to play in 5 days' time, or whatever, and you have to use your whole squad, because actually it's more of a development opportunity than it is about like winning the bowl and getting into the next competition, like the 20s trophy was. Give these women more time and these coaches more time to spend with them, develop, play against teams that you're not getting caned, where you can not properly, but you can test your defence and you can get your attack. And anyway,
I think there's definitely something in that, because I think you then can, you can use WXV or whatever the future is going to look like. The next World Cup, like you could say, look, we're going to guarantee the winner of that development competition a place at the next World Cup. That's pointless, because in 4 years' time, Brazil or Samoa or whoever could be in a totally different place. I think that's too far in the future. But you could say, do you know what? At WXV next year, win this, and you get an automatic entry point into WXV2, where you'll play teams like Scotland. So you're maybe not going to win those games, but you'll benefit 100 times more from playing England and taking 100 points.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's something in that. Just very quickly, this one I thought you would like. Not sure that's how you appreciate the women's team, let alone deserve them. Look, I think that's certainly the feeling from the squad, isn't it?
Hey, forget all that. Just go to the PS bit.
Yeah, no, I thought PS, great speech at the academy, Bruce. Well done. So there's
back home. Look, go and stick that back up, because I got distracted in my own ego there.
Absolutely.
I love watching this team. Yeah, James, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. And social media is a horrible place sometimes. And when they've not done well, the pile-on it just makes me feel sick. The SRU not appreciating them, let alone deserve them, and no matter your view, and it's the same with men, they're the only gig in town. Like, you can only be Scottish rugby. In England, you can be employed by Newcastle Red Bull or Northampton Saints, and you're not, an RFU employee. North of the border, there's only one employer. So, love it or hate it, there's no competition regulations up here, so you've got to take what you're given, and I agree, and I'm not sure. Listen, women that have gone before, Sandra Colomartino, Gilly McCord, Ali Little, can all tell you what it really feels like to be underappreciated, because they weren't even part of Scottish rugby. But then that doesn't mean that the current group should just tolerate not being treated well. I don't know what the future holds, James. What I do hope is the groundswell of support and enthusiasm that this group has generated over a long period of time. And this World Cup's been like the Olympics. We've all you become an expert in badminton and horse jumping every 4 years. And I hate when people get shirty about the World Cup, or Lions fans that come out of the woodwork for it. Like, let's embrace these people. To me, that's growing the game. The people that have embraced this now are aware of women's rugby, aware of some of the athletes. Nick Heath was talking about getting people through to watch the league games. So are people going to go and watch Rona playing for Sale against Bonds at Harlequins? That's a true test. Now, we've got 67,500 folk go and watch Scotland against England at Murrayfield, and 40,000 of them are not walking through the club doors, the Saturday after. So we've got to be realistic as well. But these women deserve our support. We can't really impact the governing body. Let's just make sure that we really appreciate what they're doing. I'll get off my soapbox now.
I think just to jump on the back of that and climb back onto the soapbox, when Scottish Rugby made the announcement that they were moving the England game to Murrayfield, I was very sceptical of the buy-in from Scotland fans. I thought, oh great, here we go. Yeah. We're going to have, they want 18, they want 30,000 as the sort of the final target. But they want to break the Scottish sporting record, which is 18,000. And I thought, oh, great, well, we're going to have 15,000 England fans, and there'll be a few Scotland fans who normally come to the Hive, and it'll feel like we're all at Twickenham. I've actually been encouraged. Those ticket sales passed 10,000 last week. And I don't think many of them will yet be England fans saying, do you know what, off the back of us winning the World Cup, I fancy a weekend in Edinburgh and I'm going to get booked up. So I think there's potential to, that 30,000 now is maybe is doable.
I think so, because I think folk are going to travel for that, and I don't just mean from London. I think folk are going to travel so I've been to 2 games. I was in Sunderland with my wife and my 2 girls, and the tickets cost us 30 quid for 4 folk to go to an international sporting event, and it was class. I've just been in a stag do with 20 lads to Brighton to watch England against Australia. My ticket cost me a tenner.
Yeah.
Like that. And right enough, all those tickets, my family tickets and the stag tickets, were bought as soon as they came out. And I think maybe some of the tickets were more expensive further on. I don't know. But I don't know what the ticket prices are for Murrayfield. But to me, if you get to 30,000, you're then going to every school in the country and going, right, kids' tickets are £1. Let's fill this joint.
But like Bruce, I've said so many times to you before on here and off, like I wouldn't have gone as many Scotland games when I was a kid if it wasn't for clubs getting cheap tickets for internationals. And those were some of the best times. The bus fulls of folk going from all the clubs, and you'd see mates or folk you'd played against from other clubs, or like, and we have totally lost that in the men's game, but like there is an avenue there to say, as you say, we're going to clubs, we're going to schools. So as you say, a pound a go, like that's where it feels like women's professional rugby is now, particularly up here.
I think that, so when I was in Rome for the Scotland-Italy game at the end of the Doddy cycle, the Uddingston women's team were there on tour. So they can now have a home trip. The Marlequins are all over the place. Bigger took 60 bairns to Sunderland and then down to Manchester. Stewartry side, there'll be flights for Orkney. Like I think it's class, and it could be an incredible atmosphere. But what I would hate there to be 30,000 seats empty when you could have filled it. And that, to me, that's growing the game, right? All this stuff about growing the game and the sevens is a shambles. And they've grown the game into, what is it they call it, new territories. Yeah, but you've lost Scotland, England, Ireland, Wales. Like how can we have got to a point now that's without being imperialistic or anything? Like, let's not be silly about this.
100% right.
We started the game for, it'd be like the World Cup without England, or football, although that has happened. But I think there's a chance. Yeah, you're right, 30,000 folk, but imagine having 60,000 folk in there watching a women's sporting event in Scotland on our doorstep. And all right, a ticket, they're maybe not going to break even. So here's one for you. Getting out of Brighton on Saturday was a nightmare. Getting from the stadium back into the town. There's a train at about a 2-hour wait, right? So we're standing in the car park trying to get a taxi home, and this woman walks past. Now, this wasn't in my taxi, this was my mate, tournament director, try to get an Uber back into Brighton. And Woody says to her, surely you've got a car? She went, no, all our money is going into making this tournament work. I don't need a car.
Interesting.
I mean, come on. So he's now tapping her up for tickets to the final, which is another story. But if you've got the right mentality, if you've got the right people saying, do you know, this has to be a success because the benefit will be further down the road. It's not about me. It's not what I can get. It's what can we give, and then what's that going to do for the future? And to have imagine the inspiration of taking kids that have never been anywhere near a Scotland international and couldn't afford it because the cheapest ticket's 45 quid and your parents got to come with you and they're 95 quid. Imagine being able to take your kid to a packed Murrayfield for an international and it's affordable. That's growing the game. That's then making them want to go and pretend to be Rona Lloyd or Fran McGee.
And on that point, that's where, like, we've seen loads of stuff over the last wee while about Murrayfield, and there was the story about, you know, the a cappella verse of the anthem happened by mistake and all that stuff. It has to be an occasion. It has to have that feel of it. You've gone to see Scotland play at Murrayfield, because you're right. So many people that go, if there are that kind of number, they might never have been before. But if you get them in this time and you're sensible with how you market it going forward, you'll get them again, you know.
Well, the yardstick would then be: are you filling the Hive for Ireland, Wales, Italy?
Exactly. Yeah.
Are you filling? You know, are you getting 1,000 folk to watch Edinburgh and Glasgow? You know, or are you filling 2 stands for Edinburgh and Glasgow? Are you getting 500 to watch them play against the Clovers or, you know, whoever else? Or are you getting more folk through the door of Stewartry Sirens and, you know, Borders Girls and Broughton Women and I think it's an amazing opportunity, and we've got to ride the wave of this tournament that's just been
100% agree.
Unreal. Aye. Anyway, we've gone about 16 minutes over what we thought we were going to talk about, and that's because you show me a shiny thing and then I go away and I chase it. All in the Game's not come back since I barked at him for the natural comment.
Well, All in the Game did come back and say, you better explain yourself, and then came back and said he wanted to see Brazil, South Africa and Argentina in major players in the women's game. So he has, All in the Game has been back a couple of times, to be fair. That's my fault.
Good lad. So let's start with Glasgow, because they've kicked the ball. Although it looks like they're going to have to start one contested scrums. You might get the call, big fella. Might be in.
Second row, not front row. Look, a tough, a sore one at Bath. There was it obviously wasn't on TV, but speaking to a few folk, it sounds like Glasgow were second best, but there was maybe a couple of tries late on that put a bit of kind of shine on the scoreline for Bath. Look, Henry Arundel came off the bench, Tom de Glanville, Quinn Rue. You know, there was a lot of their first team that won that Premiership title off the bench. And I think we chatted to Franco after, and he was pretty honest that actually Glasgow's kids, so a lot of the 20s guys who started that game were like absolutely flying. And the reality was, when some of the more experienced players came on, the level dropped because it was a pre-season friendly. They maybe haven't been in training for quite as long. They struggled to get up to the pace. So, I think he'll want them to put that right. I think the insinuation is that more of them will probably get a decent go against Northampton on Friday. We're still a bit away from the Lions guys playing. But front row is a real concern. So the kind of update from Franco was Jamie Batty and Nathan Macbeth both picked up injuries in pre-season. Rory Sutherland, actually speaking to Franco after the game, he said Rory Sutherland had suffered a compound fracture of his finger, which didn't sound that pleasant. Franco was talking about bits of bone. That is now understood not to be the case, but there is some sort of tendon, I think, injury there, which is none too pleasant. So we'll maybe not see Suz for a wee while. Murphy Walker's picked up another injury, and Xander's injured. So all of a sudden, you're missing, three Scotland international loose heads, Murphy who can play both, and you're starting tight heads. So it feels a bit. Patrick Schickerling is injured as well, so Finn Richardson, Sam Talakai might be pretty busy, but I would be surprised if Glasgow aren't looking at bringing somebody in who can give them a bit of experience, even on a short-term basis.
Is this, so when I read that about the props being injured, is that one where they phone Sean Everett and say, we're all Scottish rugby here, send me somebody along the road?
I mean, possibly, but I think Sean's response would be, Pierre Schumann was with the Lions, I don't have him, I don't have Bowen Venter, we've just signed James Whitcomb, I'm not actually sure we've got anybody we can send you. So
that was very polite of Sean Everett.
It was. I'm not sure Franco would say it in as many words. It becomes one where you look at, okay, well, are there guys who are just out of the game who could step in and do a job for a few weeks? I'm thinking of somebody like Bomber. Or are there players who are retired or who are not second, third, fourth choice down the road that you could bring up for a few weeks?
I reckon the bat signal's going up for Gordy Reid.
It feels like it. Gordy Reid, Alan Dell, Bomber Hislop.
Alan Dell weighs about 8 stone wet at the moment.
Yeah, he does. He's a man transformed. In fact, he was transformed. I saw him play a game for Glasgow.
Do you know who's getting the call? WP Nell is going to make his Glasgow debut.
I mean, can you imagine that? WP Nell starting for Glasgow in a team coached by Roddy Grant. Edinburgh fans from 2015 would be absolutely scratching their heads.
There you go, though. Talking about folk that are out the game, he's not out the game. He's playing. He's fit.
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly...
Hey, exclusive broken tonight. WPL for Glasgow.
I mean, genuinely, if there was no tight heads, it's not a bad shout. Like it's, but look, he's somebody who's had a lot of neck problems and stuff, so I'm not sure that's the route.
Show me the money.
Yeah, let's wait and see.
Class. Do you know what we forgot after getting carried away? We never spoke about CB coming back for Scotland women.
I know. I did think that. Yeah, like what for her? What a story! She obviously thought it was done. She's back in and
very excited.
And she's going to play.
She's very excited. She just sent me a message saying "crazy times." That was all it said.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, look, I think she was.
Maggie Alfonsi picked her in the Lions, so.
Who knows? And like, I'm trying to think, one of her or Louise McMillan had said something about under this coaching regime, my time's done. I think that might have been Louise, but it felt very much the same from CB. She was obviously, left out. Brian insisted it was purely rugby, whether or not that's the case. But, now she's going to play a World Cup quarter-final. And she might only get off the bench, but Scotland have lost their top two tight heads. So to have somebody of her experience with nearly 50 caps coming back in is probably a bit of relief for Brian. And for her, it's a chance to say, actually, I do want to be here going forward. I do want to put my hand up. I do want to show that I want to play international rugby. So, yeah, really interesting one. I was surprised Scotland didn't make the call slightly earlier. But, look, gutting for Eliane Clark as well, because she's been so good over the last sort of 12 months. But, yeah, a great opportunity for CB.
Yeah. So, Edinburgh, they're getting their first shot this week. I don't really understand how professional pre-seasons work. They're also difficult because you can end up playing against teams that you already know. Glasgow have obviously gone Bath and Northampton, but Edinburgh are going to Ulster, and they're not a club that are. I don't know. Ulster are at a crossroads, is maybe the polite way to put it.
Yeah, I think Ulster have been. It feels like Ulster have been at a crossroads for a wee while, and they sort of need to get a bit of a grip. I see Bryn Cunningham, who's been involved there for a million years, was part of the Heineken Cup winning team in...
No. Wasn't it the Heineken Cup? It was the European Cup.
Sorry, it was the European Cup. It was even before the Heineken Cup.
No, it wasn't. It was because the English teams weren't in it. So Heineken didn't sponsor it.
Right.
So
I forgot about that.
Mark Blair did not win the Heineken Cup. Mark Blair won the European Cup.
That's right. But, you know, he stepped away this week. So that's a big... I think he was general manager. That's a big change. Yeah, I think playing a URC team in pre-season is a funny one because you know them. Edinburgh played them in the last game of the season at the Hive. Edinburgh know them pretty well, but it also is maybe a barometer of where you're at, where Edinburgh's new squad is at, without Darcy, without Duhan, Ashman, Schumann, Bowen. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I'm less convinced about Edinburgh's double-header that I'm hoping you and I will both be at next week against Ealing and Doncaster, because I don't know how that will work. And if you play one strong squad and one less strong, or if you're mixing them entirely together, and how you build cohesion and stuff in that.
I think Doncaster is the second 15 and Ealing is the first 15, and you play it as a game rather than the nonsense that there's been in like making 15 changes at halftime.
I agree with that.
I think I don't know, but that's my guess, to try and make it as purposeful as possible. Because I find rugby pre-season, we've all been part of club rugby pre-season where, we'll play 420s. Like, why?
When do you ever do that in a match? So what is the point?
It's let's have a 15-a-side tournament, and you come up with all these different weird and wonderful ways of just giving folk 15 minutes of rugby. So I'm really hopeful that we get something that we can sort of point at and go, right, they look fit, they look like they're flying, they look like they're good to go. So it's exciting.
Just to go back to we were obviously at the Hive. What day is this? Wednesday, yesterday. And it was the first kind of press that Edinburgh have done this season, or the first press that Sean Everett's done this season. So he spoke about his future. There's a piece on the site, but Sean seems like he is pretty keen to stick around. His contract's up at the end of the season. And I think there was a wee bit of eyebrows raised because his name had been mentioned in the same breath as Franco and Gregor. Their contracts kind of all run out at the same time. But last week, David Nusafora said, well, it's very rare that you get three guys all agreeing new deals at the same time. So basically 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So now Sean's spoken. He seems like that's maybe going to move forward in the next wee while, providing he wants to stick around.
Yeah, I think Sean Everett wants to stay. I think he's thrown everything at it. And last year, they made some progress, and they've spoken about this is the first time they've really had continuity of an entire coaching team from one season to the next for quite a number of years. So,
I think just on that continuity, I think start of last season, I was really encouraged by the way they played against Leinster in the first game. Then, obviously, they went to South Africa. The wheels fell off the bus broke down, and the whole thing was a mess. And that probably defined, to a large part, the 2/3 of their season, I would say. They never shook that tag of, well, they've got this performance in them. I think with the continuity of the coaches, they've got to now show they've moved on from that. They're now a better team. They have set the lowest bar higher than it was last season, because still in that quarter final in Pretoria, they made such a good start and then conceded 31 points. And good teams don't do that, So I think there's work to do, and maybe that's why Scottish Rugby have held off with a new deal for Sean just yet. I think there's maybe a wee bit still to go, but I hope that it's not a million miles away. And like it, I think we all want to see Edinburgh do well.
Yeah, I think, well, we need it. We need all these teams to be doing well.
Absolutely.
Scotland women, Scotland, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Edinburgh women, Glasgow women. We need the club game to thrive, which is under the pump at the moment, but that's for another day. Good to see you, big fella. Lots in there, lots of opinion. Final word from our sponsor. Scotland Rugby News podcast was brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, and head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV right now. There's thousands of jobs in there across Scotland, and you can find the one for you at S1 Jobs. So go and start your search right now. Good to see you. Scotland will beat England at the weekend, and we'll be on next week to chat about it. Look after yourself, folks. Good to see you.